welcome to another Better Marketing podcast supported by Meta, to whom immense thanks for helping us put this together and indeed for their support this week in the Global Marketer Week. And got the great pleasure of picking up with Doctor, I believe, and Professor Marcus Collins just after he's come off stage doing a breathtaking speech. Very interesting CV you've got. I mean, to reduce it down, brilliant background as an agency strategist doing some of the finest stuff with Wieden and Kennedy in New York. Beyoncé's digital marketer, but a professor of marketing, great academic qualifications. And these days, I'm going to go with famous for connecting culture to brands and people, which is really, really special. So it's so great to see you. So nice to have you in. Thank you for your time.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, again. Here we are again.
I've been really fortunate. I think that the experiences I've had have allowed me to see the world in ways that I think I wouldn't have if I didn't have the bricolage of apertures and lenses, which just provides a unique way of seeing things. I don't know if it's better than anyone else, but it certainly is my way. And my hope is to empower not only marketers, but academics and people with a vested interest in getting people to move to better understand us, who we are as a species, and the forces that drive us to do what we do.
But I think, that one of the things you were talking about was we don't construct brands.
Yeah.
We can do our best, but brands are what other people think of them.
That's right.
Can you give us a couple of examples of what you've seen, how that's working?
Sure. So you think about the best brands brands by nature, by definition, are vessels of meaning. They're identifiable signifiers that conjure up thoughts and feelings in the hearts and minds of people. And the idea there is that what do brands mean depends on how people interpret them. And you could be just a razor blade. You could be just a bottle of water, right? That's what you mean. You mean water, you mean a computer, you mean sneakers. Or you can transcend those categories. And instead of just being water, you mean irreverence because you want to kill plastics. Death to plastics, being liquid death. You can just be a pair of sneakers, or you can be a provocateur of those who want to realize their best athletic self. Nike, right? These brands have greater meaning than the value propositions of the product or the category in which they reside. Beyoncé is a great example of this. Beyoncé makes great music, but she represents women's empowerment. She represents this idea of women realizing all their agency and pushing it forward. She so happens to sing songs and dance and act and direct and make content. So she's not defined by what she does, she's defined by who she is and how she sees the world. And when brands get to that level, they're operating in a completely different stratosphere that not only drives consumption, but also contributes to culture.
And which brands would you kind of call out for doing that really well at the moment? And the next question, of course, is the other way around. But let's start with the great ones.
I think about a brand like Patagonia.
Yeah.
Here's a brand that sells fleece jackets, products for us to wear when we're outside. That's what they create. But they believe in minimizing our invasiveness on the planet, right? And even though their products are parodied with other product offerings, right? I do this example in my class. I have 3 different fleece jackets up. I cover up the logo and I say, whose fleece belongs to what brand? And they 100% get it wrong every single time, every semester, every year. But as soon as I reveal the logo, they go, yeah, of course. It's what the brand means, how it resonates in their affects, what they feel, and their cognitions, what they think. And a brand like Patagonia is so perfect at doing that very thing, transcending their category. I think about a product like Dove. This is an inconspicuous product. Like, I don't know what soap or deodorant or shampoo or conditioner you use, but people buy Dove not because of what it is, but because of who they are and what this brand means to them, right? I think a brand like Elf Beauty, which I think is probably one of the most, to me, I would, if I were a brand marketer, running a brand, leading a brand, that would be my biggest crush, Elf. Because here's a brand that sells beauty products, but they believe in democratized access. They stand in for this idea of democracy as opposed to just being lip balm and face moisturizer. They transcend the category. Even though they do that really, really well, they operate by the way they see the world. And people who choose Elf, it's not just because the products are great, and they are, but they choose them because of what the brand means.
And how? I mean, strange question. Before we talk about the bad ones, how do you measure that? How do brands get the metrics to show? You know, because in the end, we've all got those nasty people called shareholders that we have to talk to.
Yeah.
And how? What kind of metric set do you see
So
people using?
there are two metrics. There are business metrics that's typically defined by engagement, whether it's consumption, whether it's time spent, whether it's clicks, these different metrics that we use to identify that behavior has been adopted, which makes sense because our job as marketers is to influence behavior. So of course, those metrics are important. But then there are also cultural metrics that aren't defined by the quantitative, but only by the qualitative. And we identify these metrics through discourse, which is how meaning is made.
Yeah.
Meaning is made through conversations, through our talking, whether it's in person, through zeros and ones, like social networking platforms, or a combination of the two. So we use the discourse as a way for us to get an understanding of how meaning is being negotiated and constructed. And then we look to see how those things are impacting consumption. Now, it's never one-to-one because almost nothing is. I mean, I'm a scientist in scholarship, and attribution is really, really hard. Like we go through great lengths to try to get one-to-one attribution, but it's challenging. So we try to create experiments, but we end up, filing down the elbows of reality. So it's never 100%. It's just the closest expression of what is. And what we know of the theory is that things that are more culturally relevant, people are more inclined to consume, which is why I love being in scholarship, being in academia, because I'm just building my repertoire of theory. And that theory helps me describe the world so I can navigate in the world better.
And as always, some of the best learning comes through failure.
Oh, yes.
So which brands are failing and getting this wrong?
Adidas had a problem with Kanye West.
Yeah.
Used to benefit from what Kanye meant to the popular zeitgeist for a long while until the meaning associated with him began to deteriorate. And as a result, it now was transferred over to the Yeezy Adidas brand. All it is meaning. This is all just a transference of meaning. And our job as brand marketers, our job as brand stewards, is to guide desired meaning and make strategic decisions such that we signal the meaning that we want to mean in the hearts and minds of people in hopes that there's congruence. And the way we get there is by better understanding how people make meaning.
Fantastic. In my experience, all the brands I've worked on, I now have like a lifelong membership of their soap operas. So I watch what Coca-Cola do and so on. And for you, what Nike has been through must have been interesting because you were part of the architecture of building it out to be brilliant.
Yeah.
And so how has that felt as you've watched it?
I laid one brick on the edifice that is Nike's greatness. And it's to your point, it's like seeing a brand falter because you know what's in the heart of this brand. It's like you would a friend, like I know what the intentions are. I know what this brand is, who it wants to be and what it can be, but it's not realizing its potential. I mean, there is the procurement challenges, i.e. they decided to remove some of their retail partners to squeeze more surplus through direct to consumer, which was problematic post-COVID. But also for a long while, Nike stopped telling stories about athleticism. Here's a brand that means athletes, right? It believes every human body is an athlete. Big, small, short, tall, we're all athletes. And the only thing keeping us from our best athletic self is us.
Yeah.
So he tells the world to just do it.
Yeah.
And in that moment where it was focused on performance, not performance on the court or the field or outside or the track, it was focused on stock performance, on sales, on optimization, on efficiency. It lost all the humanity of what the brand is about. It's supposed to be about athletes. So it's starting to get there, starting to course correct itself there, but seeing it falter is like seeing your favorite artist drop a bad album. You go, what are you doing?
Exactly.
You're better than this.
But I mean, what's fascinating is some of these great brands, Starbucks would be another one, they are beautifully built, they own a space, and then they do something else that goes wrong. But when they get back to the essence of what made them work, they're good at it.
I mean, so I'm working on a new project now, I'm working on a new book now, and it's all about the culture of work. And what I'm realizing is that, in a capitalistic framework, there is an insatiable desire for scale, efficiency, and productivity. And by its very nature, it removes humanity. By its very nature, the more we get, we have to squeeze and pull from something else. And that squeezing and pulling almost always runs counter to humanity. So Starbucks, they were doing really well. They're doing really well. They redefined coffee consumption across the globe. They said, how do we get more? How do we grow more? How do we optimize more? And by doing so, they had to step away from its beliefs, stay away from its convictions of the world, what it was about, being the third place. And as a result, they were able to optimize, but they eroded the meaning they had in the hearts and minds of people. They eroded the humanity of the brand. It's starting to return there. And it's exactly what we always do. I use music artists as an example because music artists do this as well. The first album is just all heart. It's just it's just all heart, Then the second album got a little success. That was pretty good. So it's a little better, right? You got, better producers, better recording, better budgets, it's a little bit more optimized. And by the third, fourth, or fifth album, you go, who are these guys? This isn't the band that I used to love. And when, in an effort to optimize, they begin to lose that, what do? Go back to basics. Go back to where it all started. And that's sort of where it needs the wake-up call for us as a marketing community. Get back to what it all started. Why do we do this? We do this to influence people. That's what the job is. Yeah. But why did we get into this business? No one said, I want to make more machines. No one said, ooh, I just want to count data. And data is great. But there was some connection to humanity and what these brands mean to people that got us excited about seeing an ad or seeing a brand or seeing a partnership. It's that thing. And I fear that in our haste to optimize, to be more productive, to be more efficient, that we start to lose the humanity because we prioritize the machine.
Well, I love that. And I particularly liked in your talk today, you were talking about the 3 different kinds of empathy. Because this is the way of bringing to life, how you actually create proper connection. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Michael Ventura, who specializes in empathy, he defines empathy as self-aware perspective taking. And I love that because it means you are intentionally taking on the perspective of someone else. You're intentionally adopting their lenses, taking off your lenses and seeing the world through their eyes. And there are 3 forms of empathy. There is somatic empathy, which is sort of mirrored feelings. It's automatic, right? Again, unless you're a sociopath, you do this. So if you slam your hand in the door,
start doing this,
yeah, exactly. That's right. So if you slam your hand in the door, I'm going to respond like in a very visceral way because I'm going to see that and experience it like I slam my hand and go, "Oh, are you okay? Are you sure? Goodness gracious, it looked like that hurt." That's an automatic response. And a more intentional response is something like affective empathy. And that's the golden rule. Do unto others you want done unto you, right? So if I'm having a bad day or if my friend's having a bad day, I'm going to engage them like I would want them to engage me, right? And we do that, we say, I'm a good friend. But then there's one empathy higher still, and that's cognitive empathy. And that's do unto others as they want done unto them. And the only way that is achieved is by understanding what they want. It's actually denying yourself. It's saying, hey, I would want this, but that's not how they operate. So I'm going to deny myself and prioritize them. And this is where marketing is sort of at its best. When we go, what are they dealing with?
Yeah.
We go, that's stupid to me. It's not a big deal to me, but it's a big deal to them. So how can I serve? And, as someone who studies culture, I think that it has a very close parallel to how we engage with culture, that we often say things like, how do I tap into culture? I'm going to tap into it, but that's exploitative. It's like, putting a tap in a tree and sucking out all of its resources. Instead, we should think about how do I contribute to culture? What can I bring to culture in an effort to catalyze some reciprocity between me and the people? This is what empathy does.
Yeah.
We go, this isn't about me. This is about you.
Yeah.
How can I contribute? How can I help? When we do that, people go, oh man, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then we go tell other people.
Exactly.
And they go tell other people, and that's how we get optimization.
Yeah.
That's how we get efficiency. That's how we get scale.
So you're so generous with your knowledge and time. And last time you were with us a year ago, you're in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I think you ended up by talking about brands don't need to be normal.
Yeah.
And as you engage with this audience, so have you seen, since you did that, have you thought, wow, those people were listening, they're doing something?
I would say that I see examples of brands who have identified that and have doubled down on it. I referenced McDonald's when we were in Toronto because they have done a really good job of saying we're not for everybody. And the interesting part about this is that McDonald's is a massive corporation. They operate at scale, but yet they say, listen, we're not even targeting people who buy our burgers. We're targeting fans, people who see the world the way we do, people who are our people, and we engage them accordingly. Now, if you want fries, sure, come get some fries, but we're not talking to you. We're talking to fans. And I think that level of discernment allows them to be very, very focused on what they do, hyper focused on what they do. But we know this in marketing 101, you can't target everybody. So why do we try? Why do we even try?
Because Byron Sharp tells everybody they should.
And listen, I think so well played. So I think, like, in all fairness, my bias is that I come from the school of Douglas Holt.
Yeah.
Like, I come from a consumer culture theory school of thinking. That's my framework in which I operate. But I really appreciate what Byron Sharp does. Byron Sharp is right. Distinctive brand assets are ways by which we allow for cognitive availability, mental availability, unbelievably important. But I tell you, I can see a pack of Marlboros every single day of my life. I can see it everywhere, and their assets are very distinctive, but there is no way in hell you're ever going to see me smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Because it is dispositionally antithetical to who I am.
Yeah.
Which means that no matter how distinctive brand assets are, they are mediated and moderated by our cultural subscription. So instead of being like total Byron Sharp or total Doug Holt, who I love dearly, it's the connection of the two.
Yeah.
It's understanding sort of how we operate and then how we respond to catalysts.
Since I first saw you speak, and which really impacted me, by the way, and I've stolen some of your thinking, as we all do. Good writers borrow, great writers steal. So I steal with pride, but I always credit you when I do.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, I think the thing that's most interesting about marketing is nobody's got the answer.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to bring in learning from wherever you can. But I do think we've lived through an era of brand purpose. We've lived through an era of people thinking that brands could attach themselves to social issues and be activists. And for reasons we don't need to go into now, that's not the world we live in. I mean, how are you seeing this brand and activism and in the political space? What's your view?
Well, I think that what we've seen brands do is follow this idea of having a purpose, and purpose is a shortcut for social activism. The truth of the matter is that they weren't really convinced. They weren't convicted by it. It was convenient. Like, remember, 5 years ago, so many brands across the globe were putting black boxes on their Instagram saying that we stand for black people in the wake of George Floyd's public execution. We're all about making investments in DEI, all about that. 2 years later, we start to see that erode a little bit. Now, almost all of them have pulled back because it wasn't real. It was convenient for them. So what I've always told brands is that, listen, speak up when you are convicted, when it really matters. And I like the word conviction over purpose because conviction, it implies action. That I stand for this, even if I'm the only one. Even if no one else believes it, even if it means losing customers, I stand for this.
Yeah.
That kind of conviction, people who see the world similarly go, I like that.
Yeah. And
people who disagree go like, I don't like that, but I respect it.
Exactly.
And we know this when we think about humanity, people who sort of believe in a thing and stand by it. And we see brands be, that they see what is available to them and they take advantage of it. Yeah. We see this in politics now, whether it be some of our elected representatives in the states who are doing things that are convenient for them, even though it's antithetical to everything they say they believed in and stood for years. I mean, and most recently, a brand like Steak and Shake. This was a brand, fast casual restaurant, call it fast food really, that wasn't doing terribly well. Yeah. And they said, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to zig to the zag? How do we find our own voice in this? And they found themselves saying, well, let's jump on the MAGA train. And now they're like, look, we're not going to use seed oil for our fries. We're using beef oil. And now we're lying with RFK, and now that's the train that we're on. And they're hitch their wagon to that train, and that's what the meetings will be associated to them. So someone who says, ooh, I'm not a MAGA person, no way I'm buying Steak and Shake.
Yeah.
Where people who go, I am a MAGA person, Steak and Shake is now my go-to place. These are decisions that we make. These are strategic decisions that we make. How it fares for us in the long run, we don't know. Which is why we should do these things, not because they're opportunistic, but because we believe. And that I'm convicted. So like, even if it means 10 years from now, I'm gonna lose business, I still don't, what I believe, 10 toes down.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan, as you know, of brand is business, brand is everything.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know whether it was me or a fantastic guy called David Erickson who came up with this. I will always say that because it could have been him or me. But we came up with this notion when we were at Vodafone that a brand is a character in a constantly evolving story.
Amen.
So you can define who you are, but it's not up to you what people think of you.
That's right.
And life changes, it moves on. You just got to find a way to tap into that.
That's
right. You think that's right?
Oh yeah. Cooley refers to it as the looking glass theory.
Yeah.
He says, I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who you think that I think I am.
Okay.
So it's this idea.
I think I got that.
It's like, yeah. I'm not me. I am who I think that you think that I am.
Yeah.
And because of what I signal. And just with this idea of, brand as a character, Irving Guffman, he postulated the metaphor that social living is like being in a theater, right? From William Shakespeare, all the world's a stage, and we're merely actors on said stage. We decide what character we want to be, and then we adopt the costumery that's aligned with that character. We adopt the behaviors and mannerisms of that character. We adopt the script of that character. And as Guffman would say, that if we aren't careful, before long, what was once a mask will soon become our face.
Yeah.
And this is how we are. So once we sort of go down a road, we go, well, if this is my identity, then I have to behave in this way because people like me do something like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Oscar Wilde quote, be yourself because everybody else is taken.
That's right. And it's a scary thing to be oneself.
Yeah, it is. It's
because
tough.
the first thing is, well, who am I?
Yeah.
That's a pretty intensive inventory to undergo. And then to say, I have the courage to be myself, even though by its very nature is different than everybody else.
Yeah.
Because as humans, we have a proclivity to congregate, to collect, to gather, to copy. Like this is what we do. We're wired to do it. So we have to sort of undo our wiring to be ourselves. And that's a challenging thing.
So can we touch a little bit on, through the academic side?
Yeah.
Because you have the great joy of dealing with the next generation. What are you seeing? I mean, how do you think they see our world, the world of marketing? How do you think they see the future?
I think that they are much more savvy about the different modalities of marketing than I certainly was when I was going through an MBA program, and certainly as I was as a consumer before I got into marketing as a discipline. They realized that almost every surface area is media to communicate to us, both implicitly and explicitly. So I marvel at their savviness when it comes to that. But because they're so savvy when it comes to this, they sort of yada the basics. They sort of yada the building blocks as to why it is the way it is. And I'm of the belief that you can't know how till you know why. You gotta know why to know how. So what I try to teach my students is to see the world through a theoretical lens. See a world through a lens that is not only constructed by what we know of humanity, but also moderated by the experiences we have as humans, as social beings. There's a guy named DC Daryl Cobbin who was the VP of Sprite. He did all the Obey Your Thirst work for Sprite decades ago. He's just brilliant marketer. He put it this way. I think it's so brilliant. I tell my students this too. He says, for centuries, the way that we have equated knowledge and intellect was by having answers. If you can rattle off answers fast, you go, wow, you are really smart. your ability to get to have answers in your mind about questions was a way by which we signaled intellect. But today, answers are abundant. They're abound. They're one stroke away, whether it's a Google search or even more profound or an AI prompt. Answers are everywhere.
Yeah.
The new intelligence is questions. Ask the right questions, whether they're prompts that give us AI outputs or they're curiosities about the world. So what I'm teaching my students is to be curious, because things aren't the way they are the way that we are. And if we understand the world is subjective in that nature, then we walk around with less certainty and more curiosity. We walk around with less answers and more questions. And when we do that, we find ourselves suited for tomorrow while we are active today.
Yeah. No, I tell people the older I get, the more my favorite answer to a question is, I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. My greatest learning getting a doctorate degree is that I know a lot about a very, very small thing, but there's so much I don't know. So I stay in a posture of humility.
Yeah.
I don't know. Even there are times when I'm working with clients who will ask me a question. They go, well, you know everything about culture. I go, well, I know everything, but I study culture. And so what about this? And I say, look, I don't have an opinion, but the theory does. And the theory tells us this. And if that be the case, then I suppose we should be thinking this. Then maybe that. Then we start to scaffold on top of something more solid. That's why having a good theoretical foundation, a good theoretical repertoire benefits us when we're navigating uncertainty.
And do you have a kind of an alumni set? So you've been at this for a while, and have you watched people go out of your training into marketing and be successful, and do you keep in touch?
Oh yes, oh yes.
I bet you do.
I see a lot of people I worked with who were juniors when I were in the business, or were students of mine. So I've been teaching for about 12 years. I see them working, and I go, man, like, look at you. And to me, that's the biggest gift.
100%.
As a marketer, I got to put ideas in the world, and that was amazing. I think some of the case studies I love the most, I look at it with such great pride. Like, I did that. Wow. But as a scholar, as an academic, I put people in the world.
Yeah.
And that is just a million times more powerful. I go, you see that person? I taught them everything they know. Now, I don't tell them everything they know, but I can take credit for that. And then, to me, that's what pushes my work today. When I wrote my book For the Culture, initially I thought about, this is my work, my scholarship that I'm sharing with the world. It felt very much mine, like my possession. But it took some reframing for me to understand, really, I'm just the conduit for the thinking. And my objective is about scaling the thinking, because I believe not only the learnings that come from my work not only help us be better marketers, but I am naive enough to believe they help us be better humans. And if I can make that kind of contribution, then good Lord, my job has been well done here.
That is so not naive. I think for all of us, as people that do marketing, it always will be. And we must put humanity first.
Yeah, totally.
And humanity will win in the end. No, listen, I love that point, because I probably take most pride in watching the success of people I've worked with along the way.
Yeah.
And if I've helped them get there, great. Yeah. And actually, when you take your ego out of it, that's a really empowering moment, because you just see what happens when you have the right ideas and you have the right humanity.
There's no greater gift.
No, but you give us one of the greatest gifts, which is your time. So thank you so much for your time here again. I'm going to get greedy and say, please come back next year.
Yes, totally.
And we'll talk about who's done it right, who's doing it wrong, and what's learning. But it's such a pleasure to spend time with you, and thank you so much. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thank you so much.